Donna.
All right, Deb, we're live, just so you know.
Okay.
Being recorded and live, so.
Hi, Deborah.
Hi, Donna. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Josh. You're back from wherever you're back from.
That's right.
Hi there.
Hi, Diane. Okay, we'll get started in just a couple of minutes here as people are coming in.
And I'll just keep admitting people as they come on.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Okay, well, why don't we go ahead and get started, and I'm sure additional people will join us. We first, we'll call the meeting to order. It's 5:02 p.m. And as you know, this is being recorded, and we wind up doing minutes based on the recording. We have some additional new guests with us tonight. I think certainly Donna and Jerry from the, let's see, the peninsula, Blue Hill Peninsula area. And we had invited some other guests, as you can see, from Western Kennebec and some from Lincoln County. And some of these folks are people that Denise and Matt and I have been liaising with, coordinating with, some more recent and some over the last few months. And so we invited them to join us for the meeting. So the first item on the agenda is, so welcome. The first item on the agenda is to approve the May 12th minutes. Remember, we had gotten those just the day of the last meeting and we didn't have time to review them. And then that will be followed by approving the June 16th minutes. And for those of you who are just joining us for the first time, this is a very informal group because, you know, sometimes we have two people or one person or three people from a particular town. So we take motions, but, and we do a yes and no indication, but other than that, it's pretty informal, given the nature of our group. So did anybody see any problems with the May 12th minutes? And if not, if somebody would like to make a motion, that'd be great.
So moved?
And seconded.
That was Jerry and Matt. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Well, okay, and are there any nays? Okay, and moving on to the June 16th minutes. Did anybody have any comments with respect to those?
No, ma'am.
Okay, motion?
Move we approve.
Motion. Yep. A motion to accept the June 16th, 2021 minutes.
And I think Denise seconded it. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, Matt and Denise seconding it. Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay. Super. Both of those are approved. Hey, Josh, you're posting those on the website for us, right?
I had a question for you about how to upload files that I.
Oh, we need to, yeah, we need to talk about that. Okay, glad I asked. Okay.
And then I will, yeah.
Yeah, all right. So we have a few things that we need to post. Josh and posting. Okay. So the next item is really, it's a report by the leadership team. It's a little, this is just intended to be sort of a summary of some of the things that we have been doing since our last meeting. And in most cases, we get into this in more detail, as you can see in subsequent agenda items as the meeting goes on. So as indicated here, and I asked Denise and Matt to jump right in, we have been dealing with this idea of a shifting regional strategy in the face of what we learned at our last meeting, which was Otelco planning on doing a fiber to the home build in Camden, Rockland, and Thomaston, skipping over Rockport, and of course, only choosing the areas that are the most dense and cherry picking those. Not universal build and not open access. I think whereas we had once thought that we would start with the smaller towns that wind up coming into the interlocal agreement, we've had to shift that strategy to frankly start with Camden, Rockland, and Thomaston, skipping over Rockport as well for the very same reason. We think that it's important to be the first out of the gate with respect to what's happening now. Denise or Matt, you want to add anything? Anybody have questions on that? It's all part of the feasibility study that's coming and everything, but that's at least our preliminary thinking. John? I think you're on mute. Yep, you're on mute.
Okay, I'm not sure I understood what you meant there. Are you saying that Camden, Rockland, and Thomastown are the phase 1 towns?
That is the preliminary thinking right now, yes, because we believe that it's very important for us to be first out of the gate if we're going to have a chance at succeeding against a potential build by Otelco. So Otelco last month with their news has caused us to shift the strategy.
And that was a surprise when I heard it. And what is the reason?
You mean it was a surprise when you heard it from
I heard
Otelco?
it at your meeting last month. I was very surprised to see Otelco there.
Yes, it was a surprise to us.
And I was not particularly impressed by what they said they were doing. They're doing what any for-profit ISP would be expected to do.
Sure.
Yep.
I'm a little bit surprised that the towns they're entering are welcoming them. What was the reason you said you were discounting the smaller towns?
Well, it's not a question of welcoming them. I mean, you don't get to,
We're not welcoming them. We're competing against them.
and if we can get going fast enough, maybe that will make them think it's not worth their while. But that's what has to happen.
Oh,
Because
I
they're going to
didn't
come in
mean
and
that
cherry pick the density and the profit out of the communities, and there won't be any ability to, it really would threaten our model.
I didn't mean the coalition was welcoming them. I meant that they seemed to feel welcome in the towns that they were entering.
Well, they can kind of go wherever they'd like to go.
But
Towns can't regulate that.
the town governments can't regulate them, but the citizens certainly can.
Yeah, I don't know what makes you think that they're welcome or not welcome. I mean, we all heard it for the first time at the last meeting.
I was very surprised that they apparently thought they would be facing a large subscription rate in those towns.
Well, may I speak to that?
LCI is here in Union, but LCI claims to have 34 miles of fiber strong and 44 connections. One per mile.
I mean, arguably they were just bluffing.
What's that?
Arguably they were just bluffing, and so don't take anything. Don't assume that they actually have customers all locked up. They want to come in with a show of force, being very confident, and we just shouldn't be intimidated by that, or assume they're just going to scoop up all the customers.
Are you talking about Otelco?
Yeah.
Okay, in that context, I'm still trying to understand why Deborah said that you feel a need to change your strategy because of Otelco's presence, and that you're going to focus on the large towns now and discount the smaller towns.
We're not
Hotelco-
discounting anybody, John. What we're saying is that we think that out of the gate, it's necessary, as Denise just explained too, it's necessary to be first out of the gate in those towns where Otelco is going. Otelco told us at the last meeting that Rockport does not even meet their density requirements. So certainly,
Mhm.
Union doesn't, and Owl's Head doesn't, and Cushing doesn't, if Rockport doesn't. And so I think that what we were expressing is the view that in order to be first out of the gate in those towns where they're planning to enter, in Camden, Rockland, and Thomaston, it's important for us to be first out of the gate in those three towns.
Okay,
Let me say a couple of things. I think what happened is this company, Otelco, saw the vote that we had in Rockport and Camden, and I believe South Thomaston, about how in favor the townspeople are in terms of high-speed internet and high fiber internet, and saw that as, wow, if we get in there, we can make a lot of money. It was a for-profit situation where they're probably looking around the country for places to go. And I specifically asked them, are you willing to do fiber to every premise, or are you just looking for the main streets? And they admitted that they're just looking for the main streets, and that anybody that's not on their premise would have to pay money to join the board. I think they were just looking to make a quick buck because they saw an opening. And they looked at Camden, Rockport, because we had the vote, and you could see the results of the vote. They thought, well, this is easy pickings. And that's why they were here. And that's why they're going after those two towns. And I think if we can show them that Camden is off their map, that we're not interested in their services, except as allowing them to bid on the service after we own the infrastructure. And they said, when they're asked that, if they'd be willing to bid to provide service if we own the infrastructure, they said, well, we don't know. Particularly the big corporations are are fighting hard for their profits. That's what they're here for. They don't want us to see, they don't want to see a municipal broadband association own the infrastructure, because that will cut into their profits.
Yep.
And so they're fighting it. And that was the quickest way they could fight it.
that's the information I was looking for. You've got a good argument there. It was probably the vote, the size of the vote that got their attention.
Yes.
Well,
And that's why they mentioned those specific towns, because those are the towns
Yeah.
that have the vote.
Well, they also said it 79% from Rockport, but yet they're skipping over Rockport because it doesn't meet their density formula.
Mhm.
But also they have some venture capital behind them now too, so they were obviously looking to deploy that.
Right.
Yeah.
And their network won't be open.
Mhm.
No, their network will not be open.
And you get your great introductory rate, but that will go away.
But we can't, as a utility, it's not economically feasible to build out in the small towns if we don't also have the bigger towns. And so that's a reality. And if we have to, and in the bigger towns, we have to get the more dense areas as well as the sparser areas. That's just economics for it. So we have to, we had to switch our strategy. We have to be nimble in this based on, what's presented to us.
So your current phase one towns are Camden, Rockland, and Thomaston?
Yeah, I wouldn't
Okay.
say that those are the only phase one towns, but I think that's the order. I mean, that's the order of what we think the build's going to have to be.
That's the first build. Okay, that's the definition of phase one. It's the first
Well,
build.
I mean, I would hate to think
Okay, I
Rockport's not
understand.
phase one, but I mean, it's all semantics.
I understand. Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay, another thing we've been obviously working on, we had submitted a planning grant to Connect Maine for, what was it, you guys, 20,000 or 30,000? 20,000, I think, for planning. And we were turned down, as were a number of others. And again, we're going to go into some detail on this. We'll go into the detail about Axiom. We've been working on Axiom and putting Axiom together with certain towns, which we'll cover under item 6. We have been working on many levels on federal lobbying, state legislation, policy implementation, et cetera, and including the county commissioner meeting, which we will address under number 7. And as I said, we have been liaising with a number of other areas. Some of those folks have joined us on this call tonight just for informational purposes. So again, we'll go into more detail. I think 5 is the next discussion item, which is just a recap of the regional utility itself, which, as I indicated, I had sent out to you guys a copy of the articles of incorporation that was filed with Secretary of State. The interim bylaws were also distributed to everybody. The intent there was to get us going on some interim bylaws just so we can start taking some actions and open bank accounts and things like that, making some preliminary decisions. And the idea is that we will probably issue some updated bylaws, the end of the summer or early fall, after other towns have had a chance to weigh in on the bylaws. We have not had a meeting of the regional utility, but we did establish officers pursuant to unanimous consent, which we have the ability under the law and under our bylaws to do. And that named me as the executive director and president, Denise as the treasurer, Matt as vice president and secretary. And that's all I have on that, unless anybody has questions or anything to add. Okay, Axiom Technologies, as we get into planning, study, network design. We have phase 1 underway with respect to the feasibility study with Axiom. In that phase 1, we have Camden, Rockport, Rockland, Thomaston, which we'll talk about shortly, Owl's Head, Cushing, and Union are all included in the feasibility study at this point. And we've sent emails out to those towns and to Mark Willett for purposes of invoicing and payment directly from the towns to Axiom. Did I miss anybody? I think that's it. Lincolnville, I think, is still outstanding. South Thomaston is outstanding. I think on this note, under 6A, it says it has Thomaston as being outstanding, but I think that Brian's going to report on news with Thomaston. So Brian, do you want to go ahead and do that now?
Absolutely. Yeah, Thomaston's vote, they accepted unanimously to accept the interlocal agreement, and they're looking to cut the check to fund the feasibility study.
Yeah, so that was as of Monday night, and I just found out about it today that they have voted to enter into the interlocal agreement. So we'll have a third town joining the MIDC shortly. We hope that we'll see Rockland doing that in the first half of August as well, we hope. And as Brian said, I will put together the same letter for Thomaston and Mark Willett to do the invoicing and cutting the check for Thomaston.
Outstanding. Thank you.
Somebody else want to do some talking? Matt, Denise. Matt, you put together this list of items under the Axiom Technologies. Would you like to comment on them?
I'm looking, where are you referring to, Deborah?
We're on agenda item 6.
Okay. Specifically, do you have one or two issues that I'm happy to do something specific? or otherwise we could just move on.
Okay, well, I thought that maybe 6B, you could talk a little bit about what we expect to see out of the study and the network design and so forth.
Sure. So out of this study, you're going to need to coach me a little bit on this one because I am just jumping off another call. So
Okay, all right, okay, then I'll keep talking.
yeah, not to be vague, but yeah, probably not my best moment in history right now.
Okay. All right. So anyway, we had a meeting recently with Lincolnville. We've had some discussions with some of the other towns. I don't think that, what Axiom is doing is not necessarily going road by road and saying, this is what you have up on the poles. What they're doing is looking at the feasibility to putting together 5-year pro formas for every town and how the inclusion of that town affects the utility. They are putting together high-level network design, incorporating that particular town. And so I think that they've made that clear with pretty much everybody that we've talked to. And if there's any questions with respect to what's included or not included in that study, this is your time to ask about it.
Deborah, this is Brian. Is there, we received the initial feasibility study outline from Mark back in May. Has what has been decided changed from that initial study, or is that clearly state what Mark and his team are intending to do?
Yeah, no, it has not changed, Brian. The only thing is that we should probably, we've never actually signed it. And we should add a couple of towns that we added. I don't think that it had Union, for example, in it or Cushing. So we need to kind of dot our I's and cross our T's a little bit on that. But no, the substance of what they're doing has not changed, Brian.
If we wanted to ask them to do, like you said, they're not going to go poll by poll and see what are the users, who's doing what in town. Is that something that they could do, or is that just not a part of their plan at this time? Because again, I thought that was a piece of information that would, allow us a sense of what's going on in Thomaston.
Right. I think in Thomaston and Rockland, there was a desire for a little bit more of that what exists right now piece of information. And as you know, in that proposal, they did say that they can focus a little bit more on that kind of information for those particular towns.
Well, I expect that I'll report this back to Kara and others tomorrow, and I'll reach out to Mark, because again, I think part of the education for the town is that they're wanting to get a sense of what do we have, what's currently out there, and why is it,
Yeah, you're really breaking up, Brian, and hard to hear. It's difficult to hear you.
fiber to the home plan really needed, and I think structure is weak. What's there now? I beg your pardon?
Yeah, it's hard.
It's
hard to hear you because you're breaking up, but we do know that Rockland and Thomaston do want more of that information. I think that they will be able to let you know where there's fiber on the poles and where it's not accessible. As we know, there's a lot of fiber on the poles that CCI or Spectrum has, but it's not retail accessible to customers. So they will let you know that information.
I'll reach out to Mark. Thank you very much.
Yep. So I think that's good, Brian. Just make sure that you manage those expectations with Mark so that you feel that Thomaston is getting what they expect to get, and same for the other towns.
Will do.
Okay. The other thing, I guess I should mention that while we had contemplated an early August delivery date of the feasibility study, we've added additional towns, and that's obviously caused a delay. And so we are extending that until the end of August before we start seeing the feasibility study results.
Excuse me, Deborah.
Yeah.
I didn't hear that. You were breaking up there for a second. You're saying that the feasibility study will be done by the end of August?
That is the expected date,
Great.
the end of August.
Thank you.
Additional towns, yeah. I mentioned that Axiom Mark had come and spoken at a select board meeting in Lincolnville, and I'm sure that that's available for you guys to see live stream if you're interested. I don't remember the specific date. It was about a month ago, right, Josh?
Yeah, something, I think a month ago.
Yeah.
It was the 14th of June.
Thank you, Jordan. So if you're interested in checking that out, June 14th on the Lincolnville Select Board website. We are scheduling a meeting. The last item under 6 is that we're scheduling a conference call with some of the potential ISPs, for example, Pioneer and GWI. We have had calls with both of those ISPs, you know, on an ongoing basis. There are variations in the way that the network can be designed, where especially when you're talking about an open access network, where there might be a line in the sand for ISPs with respect to certain ways in which you build it that may discourage them from delivering services on that network. So what we're doing is, I think next week we're having a call, starting out with Pioneer and GWI and Axiom as our planner, to get input from those ISPs about the things that they would like to see in terms of questions on that. Okay, next item.
Jason, did you have something you were looking to say?
Yeah, you're on mute. You're on mute.
And Deborah, I'm now with you and have left my other call.
Okay, go ahead, Jason.
I'd be glad to help out with that 6E item, meeting with the other ISPs if you'd.
Great, Jason. Great. We'll get back to you on that time.
And Deborah, to your earlier question, when I wasn't prepared to discuss, but now if I can just jump in for a moment.
Right.
So hello, everybody. It's Matt. I still have lousy internet, so you don't get any pictures of me. But with that, I just want to John's point and to some of the change in terms of strategy, although Deborah's quite low key about this, I mean, it is a fairly radical change in terms of what we need to do to make this a successful venture. So I would ask you all to bear with us and stay on top of it in the sense that Otelco is a serious threat in terms of the back of the cocktail napkin, in terms of the back of the Jerry, in terms of all the design plans that we've been doing for 6 months. You know, Josh, as we've discussed, and with Jordan and Stephen, you know, we've had to shift pretty radically, Bob, at this point, to find a new economic model, John, to your point, where we had the best intentions to start with these small towns. You know, I was going out to Owl's Head, South Thomaston, Cushing, Union. You know, that seemed like the best way to start this project because it served those who most needed it. But the economics, to Mark Ratner's point, you know, we need to be fully aware that, you know, this enterprise needs to have solid financials. So to Deborah's point, I mean, the radical change is with Otelco, and Axiom, to its credit, has been a great partner. Deborah has been absolutely proactive in terms of making sure that we have options with them, that we're making everybody aware of what's happening on the ground and making sure that we're pulling together our partners. So again, this circling back, Jason, to this idea of 6E, we are trying to communicate fully with our partners and making sure everybody knows what's going on. And the best way we can do that, Bob, is by bringing them all around the table. So to the credit of these ISPs, which historically have not sat around the table, we are bringing them together because we have to. So I just wanted to put that out there, Deborah, as the sense of immediacy and the sense of, I wouldn't say urgency, Bob, but certainly there's a certain energy that's involved in this change in strategy. So thank you for giving me a minute.
Thanks, Matt. Okay, on agenda item 7, project funding updates, seed money. As you know, and this is going to maybe kind of combine the subsections of A through D or E or whatever together. But given the given the Knox County Commissioners meetings that we've been participating in, who are not very amenable to providing, or doesn't appear to be, to providing funding out of the ARPA funds to the broadband venture. We are going to absolutely, as we said at the last meeting, stay after that, stick with it, but we can't sit around and wait for any funding to be coming anytime soon from them. And so we are working on our public and our private investment strategy with both donations as well as impact investors. And it takes a little while to get all that together. We have been doing a lot of research and discussions behind the scenes. I have a friend who is a banker in the bond markets, and he has done a lot of, he lives in Camden half-time, and he's done a lot of research work for us and put us in touch with a very well-respected bond advisor here in Maine, who we are going to be having a meeting with. I think it's next week. And that's going to be a very important meeting for us in terms of, a financial advisor. We had some discussions with the first today. That's really more, we are setting up our account for the utility, our bank account for the utility, but we also spoke with their wealth management people just to get their input. I mean, since we're going to have the banking relationship with them, we wanted to get their input on some of the wealth management aspects of this as well. We have reached out to some other contacts that each of us have. I know that some folks in select city council members in Rockland have some contacts with some large foundations. So we've just been having a whole host of discussions about that. But we need to coalesce this into a true funding strategy, which is not there yet.
Can I, Deborah, just ask about Waldo County? So with Bob and Josh and Jordan and Stephen here, have you had better success or any updates from Waldo in terms of the county commissioners?
We did meet with the county commissioners and we were pretty well received at their commissioners meeting on the 7th of July. We're planning on, and we're planning on going back on the 21st, and we're planning on going back on the 4th of August, just to let them know how important it is to all of us. Because, you guys have a fairly densely populated area. When you're talking about Southwestern Waldo County Broadband Coalition, we're pretty well spread out. And unless we get the public funds to make it work, it's not going to work for us, I don't think. So we're hitting them hard. I think they felt pretty comfortable with us being there, and they thought it was great that we were working together in Waldo County, but we didn't come home with any checks.
Jeremy, you're on mute.
maybe you're looking into this, and I assume you are, but the process, the legal process that county governments have to go through to spend revenue. I mean, can they just spend it without developing a budget? I mean, you know what I mean? That gets approved by.
No, it's funny. That's not funny, but that is exactly what we've been bouncing around. Doesn't this is revenue that needs to go through the budget committee.
Right.
So that's why, Bob, I would just, because we're also, Bob, talking to Lincoln County, and that's where the revenue issue came and the budget committee came up through the discussions that I just had this week with Lincoln County, who are amenable to this, Jeremy. I mean, they seem to be, Knox seems to be the only one, Bob, that's really pushing back. Other counties, given the proper context, given the proper coalition, seem to be amenable. But to your point, Jeremy, it does seem to be something that as revenue, these aren't grants. So as something that would be revenue, Bob, I would just, again, we need to figure out, does this need to go through budget committee? And Jeremy, you would know better than I, but it certainly would appear that way.
Yeah.
I think everybody's trying to figure it out right now.
Right. Well, the Knox County Commissioners had a meeting yesterday, which I did not attend, but Matt attended part of it on Zoom. And the 4 town managers of Camden, Rockport, Rockland, and Thomaston wrote a letter to the county commissioners because they had on their agenda the approval, and I'm looking at a note here from Audra, they had an approval, a proposal from the Knox County Homeless Coalition that they wanted to basically ram through. And this is after at their June meeting, they said that time was not of the essence to them and that they were not going to be awarding any funding to any individual group anytime soon. And yet at their next meeting, they were ready to approve this, this proposal. So the 4 town managers and administrators wrote a letter asking them to table it. Apparently, I understand that that Sharon Pullman objected to tabling it and tried to push it through, but they did table it. So, they also don't like the fact that we're, on the one hand, they're supposed to be looking at what their charter says that they're supposed to be representing the municipalities and the voters in the districts in which they are elected, and yet they don't seem to care about what the voters and the municipal officers of those select boards have to say, and they don't like it when they tell them what they think. So it's not a good situation.
And I would hope, Bob, that hopefully Waldo might be the ones that we look to, that you might have the best synergy with your county commissioners in terms of trying to set forth a policy and a program that maybe we may again be following you in this particular situation, if you can find some kind of synergy.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say exactly how everything will work out, but I know that we're pushing real hard, and we're trying to get them to focus on, I mean, if you look at the map of Waldo County, we've got a big hole as far as unserved and underserved people. And I mean, Waldo County is way in the deep hole. And that's what that money is supposed to go for. And, one of the commissioners said, well, maybe we'll allocate it based on population. And I said, well, if you're going to allocate it based on population, you're coming up with an easy answer. You're not addressing the issue. And the issue is, how do we get this into unserved and underserved rural areas? Not how do we slice the bologna so that everybody gets the same size piece?
And yet in Knox County, if they wanted to allocate it on the basis of population, which is something that we've even mentioned, then it would mean that there would be $4 million that would be available to, to just Camden, Rockport, Rockland, and Thomaston for broadband, which would be exactly what we've been requesting. John had his hand up, and then Jeremy, I think you did as well.
I'm all set.
Okay, Jeremy?
Oh, no, I mean, I was just thinking, it's all right, Deb, I'll touch base with you privately on a certain issue on this county funding piece. That's all right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Um,
I mean, I guess, sorry, Deb, I'm going to come back to it really quick. What was Sharon? Sharon was the only one that was, she wanted to push it through. And
that's my understanding from what Audra has advised me. She had a strong objection, was trying hard to push it through.
Mhm.
She claims she wants to work with municipalities, but on the other hand, she,
was she trying to push through the vote? Or was she trying to push through actually funding? Didn't want to table the discussion, but wanted to have the discussion and a vote, or was she trying to push through Knox County Homeless Coalitions and the other entities that are involved there, their plan or their proposal?
again, I was not on the call, but I'm told that she was, quote, really trying to push through the Knox County Homeless Coalition's proposal.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. All right. Thank you.
yep. Recall at the last meeting, we were concerned about the Treasury guidelines that had come out that had limited the use of broadband to only underserved and unserved. Treasury came out with clarification, FAQs to expand that and made it clear that those funds could be used in other areas in the course of getting to unserved and underserved locations. And so that helped to a large degree what our problem was. Not that the county won't raise that as, an objection to the use of the funds. I already mentioned that the planning grant for 20K was rejected. I think mainly because they think that some of us are already served, although Connect Maine fails to recognize that we're a coalition that represents a whole bunch of people, many of whom are underserved or unserved.
But there's other undercurrent going on with Connect Maine, and now presumably would carry on with the Maine Connectivity Authority. This notion that if you are not taxing your residents for the internet, you don't have skin in the game, you haven't demonstrated that there's a commitment on the part of the residents for this internet. And it's very disturbing because, of course, we had these votes and those don't count for anything. And we understand from Nick Batista that when they're scoring these proposals, they use whether if you're subject to the full faith and credit of the towns, that's a proxy for all sorts of things in their scoring proposal. But I think, as Abby McMillan has indicated, this is so wrong because if you're in a big city, you get great internet, presumably, because there's competition. And all we're trying to do out here is create competition. But why should it have to come out of our pocketbooks to make that happen when there are alternatives? And Connect Maine, frankly, could help us. But that, they came back to us in the response as to what was missing in ours. And there was this reference that we hadn't shown the commitment on the part of our residents for this internet.
So good points, Denise. And we have been participating, I think since our last meeting, we participated, all three of us in Midcoast advisory committee meeting, forming the new Maine Connectivity Authority. And we really had our hands full in that because there was, the telecoms, the incumbents were there fighting against municipal broadband efforts. And we were, trying to fight back in a nice, polite, respectful way, which wasn't easy. And more of the discussion took place in the chat than in the actual verbal comments, because I think we verbally didn't want to go after each other, but in the chat we were a little bit more forceful. But in any event, some of what Denise was talking about came through in those meetings. And even though we pushed back with Nick Batista, who of course is on the Connect Maine board, the Connect Maine board of directors, as opposed to the MCA going forward. He, as Denise says, sees that they see that taxation, full faith and credit on the towns as being this proxy. they give us no credit for the fact that we had, these votes with these overwhelming numbers of voters who supported going forward with the municipal regional broadband effort. They also, they say that we need to have skin in the game, and we say, well, we can come up with private investment money, and we could come up, if we come up with that, why is that not skin in the game? Somehow the private investment or donation money is not considered to them to be skin in the game, equal to what taxing our residents is. So it's a very screwed up situation, and we're fighting it every day, and it's difficult.
Yeah, and we did get Vicky Dudera and Seth Berry involved, and I think, for this group, thinking of your representatives to really push on making those representatives aware of the importance of municipal community broadband, that really needs to be an emphasis on the state's part, and it is not headed that way in the state right now based on what the what MCA, what their board looks like.
Stephen.
At the risk of going out of order in the agenda, even though I know we would get to this, I wanted to, just since we're talking about this really important point, I wanted to make 2 points. One is that all of us who are on this call, and many of us who are not on this call, but share a belief in the importance of municipal broadband, really need to do, it seems to me, a better job than we have been doing so far in arguing for a significant share of public money, taxpayer money, going to support municipal broadband, as opposed to going to the private incumbents who are now turning up the heat as the significant dollars increase, the likelihood of their of hitting the market. So I want to be very clear that, and Matt touched on this, and I'm not an officer of this group or any group. I'm just a guy. But the fact of the matter is that the battle lines are very quickly being drawn between those two groups who are competing for this very substantial amount of money. And the money, as we know, flows federal, state, county, town. So the argument and the battle is going to be fought at all of those levels. And, citizens groups like ours are always at a disadvantage, always, when facing industry groups, particularly that have paid staff and paid lobbyists to press their point. So we are going into this, it's a little bit of a David and Goliath kind of thing, where we are going to have to work really hard, and especially as volunteers, to influence the debate. And each of us has a role to play. I think, and this is true whether you're in Waldo County or in Knox County, or for that matter, anywhere else. Maine, as everyone knows on this call, has the highest rate of monopoly internet service providers in America. We're number 1 in internet monopoly. That means we're number 50 in terms of choice. And that has come about from the current system. So perpetuating the current system and expecting a different result would not be a very smart strategy. And therefore, each of us has a role to play. Tomorrow, coincidentally, are the hearings for the new board members of the Maine Connectivity Authority. And those hearings are public, and they are streamed. And I've put into the chat box the names of the people who are nominated for board seats, and I've put in the link to the hearings that will be streamed tomorrow that are open to the public. And so I hope that some people will show up. You will note, and those of us who've been, a little bit further in the weeds on this already note that the board of the Maine Connectivity Authority is very different than the board of Connect Maine. Connect Maine had $15 million to give away. The Maine Connectivity Authority is going to have more like $150 million. So while Connect Maine is important, and while we don't know exactly what the level of their involvement will be going forward, we know for sure that the Maine Connectivity Authority is going to be even more important in terms of dollars, and frankly, more important than any of our towns individually or even our counties in terms of their resources. And whatever financing plan we look at, and I may not represent the majority view on this, but my own view is whatever financing stack we look at will rest on the foundation of public money, not private money. And in fact, the whole reason why the federal government, including, by the way, Senator Angus King, has been pushing for this money to be allocated, this money being the ARP money and the future to be determined infrastructure money, to go to broadband, which is very, very clearly the number 1, 2, or 3 priority of all of these large federal bills, is because there is a belief that the foundational layer of the financing stack should be public money. So while I think it's important for us to raise private money, I do not think that is a substitute for the bedrock funding strategy to be public. And I do not think that we as a volunteer citizens group should lay down and roll over while the incumbents, who are private corporations, get a disproportionate share of that public money. And that is what we need to communicate to our legislators. That is hopefully what we can communicate to the members of the MCA board. Hopefully it's what they're going to be asked about tomorrow at these public hearings, which any of us can join. And it's certainly something each of us should be doing on our own. For example, tomorrow I'm speaking at a group that's going to be about 35 people that Deborah and Denise are kind enough to join, which is the Midcoast Forum. It's normally on foreign affairs, but I said I wanted to talk about broadband in Midcoast Maine, and specifically the municipal option. And we're going to have 35 people from our communities, some of whom are, quite well versed in this, who will be there. So I think each one of us needs to be pressing this with a very clear understanding that we are that we are demanding a portion of these public monies, not all of them, but our fair share of these public monies to go to the municipal alternative to what is the current status quo in Maine, which has landed us in 50th place in the country. So that's more. I don't know if that was the right agenda item, Madam Chairman, but I did want to make those points.
That's great, Stephen. Thank you for making those points. Somebody else, Jeremy?
Yeah, maybe just to jump onto that. Stephen, thank you for that. I just want to say it looked like the one that's closest to us that's actually on the committee tomorrow is Representative Ziegler, right? I would hope, I mean, I was about ready to reach out to him today. I haven't reached out to him today. If there's anyone on that list, I got to think he's going to be one that would be open to this and supportive of the work we're doing. Do you know if we've spoken to him yet, or anyone has?
I'll let Josh and Jordan talk about it, because from a political standpoint within Waldo County, and I know Bob Kurek just had to go, but yes, he has been spoken to. Oh, are you still there?
Bob is here.
You're on mute, Bob. You're back on. Now you're back on mute.
There, maybe I got it.
Yeah, you got it.
double fingering it or something. Our group has talked with Paige Ziegler, and this next time we go to our county commissioners, one of the things that we had intended to do was to bring Chip Curry, Paige Ziegler, a superintendent from RSU 3, and hopefully Kendra Joe, so that we can impress on the commissioners the importance of broadband in Waldo County. And so I do believe he's behind us. I know some of the guys know him fairly well on our committee, and they've been talking with him. So I've got to go. I've got to run the SWCBC meeting now.
Yeah, thanks, Bob, for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, we have a number of us have talked to him in the past. And I do think that he's, he's supportive. So I hope that you guys looked at the written testimony that we submitted yesterday. I sent it out last night, and that's where it was suggested that, as I said in the email, we don't want to necessarily oppose individual. I mean, first off, it's not going to do any good if we try to oppose individuals at this point in time, and it puts a target on our backs. So we opted for the idea that we wanted them to, we wanted to send a message through those 3 questions that we were asking, and to also, show the importance of that and get some kind of commitments, or at least flesh out some of the comments that some of us have heard from some of those folks in the past that are pretty anti-municipal.
And to Stephen and Deborah's point, we were on, Stephen, as you were as well, a call with Representative Dudera and Representative Seth Berry to try and be ahead of this particular discussion, to try and inform them and to share our concerns with them, again, ahead of the hearings. I would leave it to you, Stephen, as to your response as to the sense that Representative Berry, in terms of being an advocate for our cause, I was not impressed at that time. I know we're being recorded, so I'm cautious.
The only thing I would add is, as citizens and volunteers, this is our, this is a publicly streamed hearing tomorrow. I think it would be great if some of us can show up to express our interest. I think I have no idea how the hearing is conducted, whether there's even an opportunity for the public to make any comments. Probably not.
But
But
in advance to do that, which you can do. You can do as late as 30 minutes before the hearing, so you still have time to do it. But just be aware that you have to.
Okay, but all I'm saying generally is that I think, regardless of the specific confirmation of a specific board member of the MCA, which is far above my pay grade, I think that the key thing we want to do is simply make noise and make it be recognized that there is a constituency for a public option for broadband in Maine. And we show up, and whether it's at a town select meeting or a county commissioners meeting or the new state authority, which is going to have by far and away the largest purse of money to invest, we're at the table. And that's why I wanted to raise this and urge people to go if they can.
One of the things that we're also working on putting together is a statewide municipal broadband coalition, so that we can respond quickly to things, and we can actually try to leverage the fact that there's probably 50-ish towns that support municipal broadband, and we want to leverage that fact. So I think you guys have all seen some things from me, certainly Donna and Jerry, and some of the Bob, who's gotten off, have seen some things from us about that. So we're in the process of forming that.
Just a quick question. Do we know, out of that list that Stephen gave of the nominees, any of them that definitely support municipal, or do we know anything about, are there bios or information about each of these guys?
Well, there was just some very quick, in Exhibit C, Attachment C to the agenda, these guys were listed with
Oh, okay, I must have missed that.
a little bit of their backgrounds. Do we know, I mean, you guys, Javier is supposed to be municipal friendly. And tell me who's the other person here. I'm looking at the list real quick.
Danielle.
Yeah, Carlos, Melissa Carlos is the only one who identifies as a advocate for municipal utilities. But even as of late, on the latest MCA meeting, he was silent, and I called him out on it. So we went at it, and I was concerned of why he was silent and would not, in terms of our advisory group and working group, would not say anything in favor of municipal utilities. And then it came out the next day that he was a nominee for the MCA. And it was
and also
disturbing.
Abby supported somebody else. Who was the other person that Abby supported in her comments? Abby.
Yeah, well, yeah, Abby was in favor of Michael Reed, who unfortunately is the state president for Fairpoint Communications.
Yeah.
So Melissa, I mean, the list, I don't know if you have in front of you. I mean, again, we're being recorded, so I will behave myself, but it is not a Muni-friendly crowd. Tim Snyder at the MCA meeting referred to us as being a waste and an archaic model. Robert Souza is the former president and CEO of Hotelco and currently its largest shareholder. Not a good thing to be on the MCA. Michael Reed, who I just mentioned, is the state president for Fairpoint Communication and a recent inductee to the Telecom New England Hall of Fame, in case you're wondering. So Melissa, I thought you'd be excited about Michael's indoctrination or induction into the Hall of Fame. John Chandler, who is your banking rep on the MCA, is he's proud to say that his clients come from the Fortune 500 in terms of who he represents for finance and tax consulting. It is not a good group. It's a tough crowd.
So to Stephen's point, I mean, we're fighting this and we're fighting it every day, and we're sending out written testimony. We're meeting with legislators. We're doing this stuff, and yes, everybody needs to be doing it and needs to be doing the kinds of things we are and more. But at the same time, we have to be realistic that we can't sit around and think this is where the money's going to come from for this. And I mean, we fight for it and we try to get everything we can, but at the same time, we have to be working hard on private investment for seed money.
Well, and I'm sorry. May I? Hey.
Yeah, Jordan.
Well, Deborah, you actually, I mean, you kind of said what I wanted to say, but in being a part of all these meetings, I think that we're all seeing a trend, and it's disturbing, but it is a trend. And I think that with the governor's latest veto of the hour power, I think we really need to prepare ourselves for the fact that we're going to have to find a way to do this on our own without any money from the state or Fed at all. And I'm just wondering if that's something that we're formulating, or if that's a strategic plan that it sounds like it, but the more I hear, the more I feel like this money is not for us.
Well, I think it's true that all the forces are ganged up against us. And so we have to keep fighting at it because it's the right thing to do. And if we wind up having some success some months from now, great. But in the meantime, we can't sit back and say, okay, this is our strategy for funding, because if that's the case, we're going to lose out on this opportunity. John, you had your hand up. Did you?
Yeah, just a comment. You were suggesting a minute ago that you're doing a lot of this reaching out to the financial authorities and the political organizations. And I think you were suggesting that the rest of us need to be reaching out too. Mm-hmm. If that's what you're suggesting, there needs to be a strategic plan somewhere that gets us all on the same wavelength and targets us to specific objectives, specific targets that we should be aiming at. It can't be just a willy-nilly, all of us go out there and start lobbying.
As long as we're all saying the same thing.
Say it again?
As long as we are all saying the same thing in terms of supporting municipal community broadband.
I think it's more important that we be saying it to the right people. I mean, when I look at that list of board members for MCA, it's obvious. It's just obvious that lobbyists got there first. They didn't pull that out of the yellow pages.
Well, we understand this was in the governor's court to select these folks.
So maybe that's where we start.
Well, yeah, we are
Anyway.
going to the governor's office, but yeah, you know, and it's interesting, John, you know, this group said, oh, it was going to be so transparent, right? With this new MCA. So here, Denise and Matt and I are participating in these advisory committee meetings, just, you know, and ending like a week ago or 10 days ago at most. I think a week ago.
Hours of meetings, hours
of meetings. And they never even mentioned during the meetings that nominees had been chosen. We find out about it like the day after, and they'd already been chosen. And the press release came out from the governor's office.
That's shocking. I mean, that's shameful.
It is.
It is shameful. There was no opportunity for us. There was no reach out to municipalities or to anyone to say, would you like to nominate some folks that to the governor's office? There was nothing. It was a fait accompli, and it was hidden by even those of us who were on the advisory group.
And Danny Sullivan, who, you know, of course, is sort of the leader of municipal broadband in the state, indicated he's been trying for several months to be appointed to that board, and got no response, no interest at all.
Yeah, not even a response or callback or anything from the governor's office. And he is actually in the process of scheduling a meeting with the governor's office now, but of course it's too late. But he's been trying at this for months. I've got
He got on the board and was just dissed. I mean, not allowed.
Well, and John, can I just say too, I feel things have been moving very quickly, and I know I can only speak from my own personal standpoint, but for the last 2 months, in our email chain, there has been quite frequent updates as we find out that these things are for talking in groups, workshopping groups, meetings with senators. There's been a lot of coordinated efforts going on, and a lot of this has been going on at the drop of a dime with very little lead notice, and that's not the fault of anyone here. It's just the nature of what's going on right now in development. And I think that our reactions have not only been coordinated, but unbelievably swift in a lot of these situations, and sending letters, lobbying with groups, getting select boards to draft.
Oh, Jordan, you just went on mute.
Sorry.
One of MCA's board members just cut you off.
Yeah, I mean, Donna and Jerry, who are on the call still, I mean, they, you know, a lot of this stuff has been, as Jordan said, you know, we've been moving swiftly, and to their credit, Donna and Jerry and others have been, I mean, I send out an urgent email and, you know, a high priority email with a copy of what we're sending on behalf of the coalition, and boom, you know, the same day, oftentimes we've gotten tons of other folks, the associations, the individual municipalities, also weighing in. So it's been rather extraordinary, but it has happened quickly. And I mean, it happens, we act on it as soon as we find out about it. And you know, and they and our friends here do as well. And we send out to you guys everything that we send. So, you know, there's not much time for a lot of coordination up front. And we, you know, you guys have the talking points, and you know who your representatives and senators and everybody are too. So, you know, we invite you to take up.
Those emails you've been sending out, that you've been copying us on are excellent. The ones you call testimony, the ones that go to the, okay, yeah.
Yeah, thanks. And also the Senator Collins letter, for example. I mean, you know, we found out that Senator Collins was leading this effort to keep municipal broadband out of the infrastructure bill that's pending in Congress right now. And we found that out, and we were told that we have 24 to 48 hours to respond. So
That was a shocker.
yeah, so within 24 hours we responded, and so did a bunch of our other sister organizations or whatever. And so, you know, it's the best we can do. And
reaching out, Deborah's done a great job of reaching out to the press on this, really talking to them about educating them, and then working with them on what's been happening in this.
Yeah, and we've gotten some, as you know, some good press and some good opinions coming out of the press. And we've been coordinating with Chris Mitchell at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. He's the one that gave us the heads up on the Collins thing and said, you got to get back to him within 24 hours to 48 hours. And I gave him heads up on something else today that he was very appreciative of. So we're really, and then he shares that with other states, other cities. So there's a lot that's going on.
Yeah.
And John, if you would take a minute to put together, just an outline of what you think would be a strong strategic plan, we'd love to compare with what we're doing. So if, for instance, if you feel that, again, if you could just put something together that said, here's what we should be doing on the federal level, here's what we should be doing on the state level, here's who we should be contacting on the county level. Be glad to cross-reference that for what we're doing. To Jordan's point, I have been reaching out on the state level. My concern was, as you've all seen, Donna and Jerry, thank you, and all of you who responded, Jordan, in the last minute. I have filed with Andrew Butcher and with Nick Batista and with Peggy Schaefer a complaint saying that we are systematically not on these email chains in terms of inclusion. And we being anybody who's involved with a municipal utility model. And no one said that was not the case. No one said that we would be added to these lists. So again, I apologize the fact that you get these things the day before or the morning of, but that's because I'm getting it at the last moment. So again, John, would love if you can, I would happily take in any kind of strategic plan in terms of a big umbrella overview. And then just for all of you, keep in mind that we are doing our best, fighting the good fight at all levels, on the federal, on the state, county, muni, and then doing our best to Stephen's point, to try and get the communities engaged and be champions in our communities.
Okay, I'll do the best I can, but let me just caution you, I'm too far out of the loop to be able to put together any kind of detailed plan. There's a core group here in the coalition that is much closer to the problem than I am, and that's going to prevent what I write from being very useful, but I'll do the best I can, just as an illustration of what the strategic plan might look like, although it's not going to surprise any of you.
Excellent. Thank you, John.
Okay. So I think that we have really covered things in both agenda item 7 and agenda item 8. Anything that's not spelled out specifically in 8, we have touched on. Unless anybody has any questions on that. Going to number 9 is an update on community and regional updates. Brian already gave his update on Thomaston. We mentioned, thank you. We mentioned that we expect interlocal agreement, hopefully signed on to by Rockland in the first couple of weeks, I hope in August. And so I open it up if anybody else wants to report on what's going on in their area. And Donna and Jerry, feel free to weigh in as well.
So for Lincolnville, we are sort of leaning on our broadband committee to give us a recommendation on how to move forward with a feasibility study. Stephen is actually on our broadband committee. Stephen, do you want to chime in on the work that you guys are doing?
Yes, on the next Board of Selectmen meeting, which is the 26th of July, there's an agenda item to talk about funding and authorizing and funding a feasibility study. We in Lincolnville have a town resolution or ordinance that requires us to bid competitively any expenditure over $8,000. So we have to have a competitive bid, regardless of whether we join, the Axiom feasibility study or not. So that's what the July 26th discussion will be about. The Broadband Committee, which is purely consultative, has prepared a list of all of the consultants who we could send such a request for proposal to, which I think I've shared with all of you as well, which pretty much everyone now knows. And we will have drafted a draft letter that the town could send to this list of people requesting their proposal. So that's where we stand, and hopefully the Lincolnville Board of Selectmen will make a favorable decision on that on July 26th.
Donna?
Hi, this is Donna Beninati. I'm with the Peninsula Broadband Coalition over here in Sedgwick, and we are really trying, and we're working hard to make something happen over here. Although we did, just to share some information with you, we applied for the RFI, the NTIA Connect Maine RFI, and I was just informed today that, through basically through Connect Maine, that they appreciate our submission, and it's a very competitive process, and they've looked at the priorities for to keep this application for Maine to be competitive, and they did not accept our proposal as well as other proposals on the Blue Hill Peninsula, which were all inadequate apparently. But however, they did say that they did select a proposal, how fortunate for us, from Consolidated Communications to serve our region. And, because they can leverage RDOF funding and the number of locations passed and the cost per location. And, I'm really just flabbergasted over this, because Consolidated Communications has been serving us for many years. However, we are truly unserved, and there's no local service. I'm lucky if I get 5 megabytes per second download and 0 upload. I rely on my my hotspot on my phone to do my work as a teleworker. So it just seems really just like insanity to give and allow this large organization to be so heavily funded, and yet to do the things that they should have done, 5 or 6 years ago, that they haven't done. So, we're just trying to figure out what to do next. My hope is that the Midcoast Internet Coalition will adopt our coalition in our little towns, and we would love to participate in joint grant applications for federal grants. I also applied for an NBRC grant for planning. I'll know about that in August, so I don't know what will happen with that. We were also turned down for a planning grant as well through Connect Maine. So it's very, very challenging. So we're just trying to figure out where to go, because we really believe in this municipal model. But we are so appreciative of all the work that Deborah and Matt and Denise have shared with us, and it's provided a lot of support for us as we kind of struggle through this process. Thank you.
Thanks, Donna. Steve, do you have your hand up? No. Okay. Anybody else? John.
Yeah, quick question, Deborah. At the June 16th meeting, there was some discussion of the fact that the financial organizations you've been talking to have told you that the take rate estimate was going to be critically important to obtaining funding. And you were putting together a plan under the auspices of your marketing committee to figure out how that was going to be done. And it looked like there were some strong hints that that plan was going to be levied on the prospective phase 1 towns to carry out in their respective towns. I haven't heard anything about that in this meeting. Has that gone by the wayside now?
No, we haven't gotten to the report for Marcom, and frankly, that is something that that ostensibly Matt and others head up. Although Matt has indicated numerous times he's looking for a chair of that group, but we are working. We're working on it. You know, as best we can. We're working toward a plan. We're working on the financing, probably a little bit more heavily at the moment, but I'm sure that Matt is giving some brain power to that
Yeah,
item.
I can cover it in 2 sentences when we get to that item on the agenda, if that helps you all.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, the only reason I brought it up was that it sounded at the last meeting that that was going to be a strict criteria for becoming a phase 1 town. And it sounds to me like there have been bigger problems in the last month or so that we're wrestling with right now.
That's
Okay.
true. The bigger problems are the funding, right? And the initial, the sources of funding. So if no other updates, I don't think, from what I'm seeing. Okay, so let's move into finance. We've been talking about finance throughout this whole meeting. I've already mentioned A and B. C, we are working on prospectus for private and commercial investors, as noted here. There's not too much more to say about that other than we're working on it. We're getting prospectuses from other entities like EC Fiber and so forth. Meeting with financial experts, I already mentioned. E, F, we continue to just maintain some contacts with those who we've already met with. Obviously, the first was the most recent. We haven't talked to Machias yet, have we, Matt? It's something we will need to circle around with.
Yes.
We encourage you to watch this Digital Frontiers that we have on the agenda. I think we have a hot link to that. It's very interesting. You know, one of the things that we are exploring the possibility of the issuance of revenue bonds, perhaps earlier than the Digital Frontiers might suggest that we could do it. I really, because of the public nature of this, I don't think that we want to talk too much about it, but we're just looking at the potential of joint ventures or other partners that might enable us to make a revenue bond strategy a more of a kind of first tranche of investing once we get seed money, rather than a further down the road tranche of investing. So more to come on that, obviously. Again, we look for volunteers to be on the finance committee. We're obviously not sitting around waiting for volunteers. We're going out and doing what we can do on our own, but nobody has been stepping forward to assist on the finance committee. So, it's kind of a message, like Stephen said earlier, that everybody in our group really has a responsibility to help do some of this lobbying and outreach, and as well as we're going to be coming back to you with respect to the Marcom and the take rates, and the Marcom committee will be coming back with recommendations on getting everybody involved and getting those take rates up. And at the same time, when we have put together our financial strategy plan, we're going to be looking to everybody to go out and help help us get those investors or donations for what we're going to be doing for seed money. So Matt, you want to talk about Marcom?
Sure, that's a great segue. So to the point, John, you were asking about subscriptions. Really, a lot of our time, to Deborah's point, has been really about lobbying and pivoting and addressing immediate concerns, which have to do with legislation, which have to do with allocation of ARP funds. So that's been a top priority. And then as well as, without going too deep into the weeds, the idea of putting together our presentation materials. So we've been talking to numerous people to get samples for Perspecti and for sample presentation materials to make sure that we are in sync with what's been successful in the region and in the country. So that is ongoing, John. So that's been a time commitment. So, but within that, within that realm, for instance, next week we have 3 meetings with people who are involved in pre-subscription. So before reconvening the Marcom group, it was important that we had some samples and some things to bring to the table so that group could do its work. So my goal is to, as I said, we have meetings this coming week with people who do these pre-subscription models professionally. So there are 3 of them on the docket for next week. And then my goal is to, after we have information and samples, to reconvene the Marcom committee and start discussing what would be in our best interest in terms of taking from that information and designing our own pre-subscription model that would best, in the best interest of the financiers and in terms of a prospectus and in terms of take rates, really represent who we are and what our potential subscription model would be. And to a certain degree, how we're going to launch this, where we're going to launch this, and what our desired outcomes would be. So John, to your point, it's certainly on the agenda in terms of a to-do list, but it is definitely taken a backseat for the last 30 days, no question about it.
Just a quick comment, Matt.
Yes, sir.
I wasn't trying to push it. Union really wants to be a phase 1 town. And it was suggested at the June 16th meeting that this was going to be an important gate that the phase 1 towns had to go through. And we've been having discussions inside Union on how to go about it within the town. And that was the only reason I brought it up.
No, Mr. Gibbons, you're fantastic. And it would have been, I think you were spot on. We had a very dynamic and unexpected change to the landscape, meaning that we have a 800-pound gorilla, as I like to refer to Otelco publicly at this point, as an 800-pound gorilla that happens to have the backing. They've now publicly announced that, who their VC backers are. So they're playing hardball. And so that's certainly changed the landscape for us in terms of, to your point, really pushing Union, for instance, to get those take rates and get that subscription to you all. We have a different game that we're playing right now in terms of making this all work.
Yeah. And there are indications that the 800-pound gorilla has fangs and rabies.
I agree. So don't get bitten. But Deborah has been kind enough to introduce me to some 1,200-pound gorillas. So we're not backing down because I love Donna so much. And Donna is the mistress of the chat. When I'm just getting completely pulverized, John, in an MCA meeting, Donna has my back. Jordan has my back. So, thanks to Deborah for introducing us, hopefully, to some 1,200-pound gorillas, we'll be able to stand on 2 feet, do our best. And then, to your point, we'll get to those take rates and the subscriptions as well.
Yeah.
And buy some bananas.
Lots of bananas. Josh, will you go to the store and get me some bananas? I could really use a whole lot of bananas. So
sure thing.
Thank you. I much appreciated. So yeah, thank you.
To your point, you guys have been spending some time thinking about this, which is great. And if you have any ideas or if you do any work on it that you'd like to lob in to us, and we can share with any of the other towns, that's great too. So anything that any of you can do and focus on that we're not able to do at the moment is helpful to everybody. So very welcomed. All right, so
Poor Melissa. Melissa, are you okay out there in Hope? All by yourself, alone in Hope.
I know. I'm really jealous of many of you there. We're chugging along in Hope. Nobody cares about our meetings, and it's okay. I'm still going to their Hope meetings, and we're just doing what Hope wants to do at this moment. But I'm really happy to still be part of this group and hear what's going on. And I see your call out for new committee members for the Marcom group, and I was going to volunteer for that if you're still looking for new members. So
absolutely would love that.
I have a couple years of advertising, a couple years of marketing, and a bunch of intuition. So,
well, but the question is, because Josh, do you have bananas as well? Will you bring bananas? Because now they're going to be live meetings.
I don't know. They're not local. I don't know.
Melissa, I know, can we be in new business now? Deborah, is that okay for 1 second? I'm just curious about the rollout out there in Hope. Is there any word? Again, we have two situations. One is yours with LCI, and then we have Northport, which has a GWI build, that's happening. So I'm curious about what's happening. Does LCI come to you guys and say, we're in the middle of this, we're doing it?
Well, actually, it's interesting. So they won the grant, and they requested a meeting with the Select Board of Hope and the Select Board of Appleton. And so I've organized that for next, is it Tuesday or Thursday? I think next Thursday. And this is supposed to be the launch meeting. Technically, the project started July 1st. I have put down a bunch of conditions about moving forward and what the committee expects from LCI, the information, the database, and that loops us back to, I've been pushing the LCI on updates for the CARES. We still don't have everyone updated. There's still 11 people that never got connected for CARES. So there's a lot of little moving pieces, but I'm in touch with LCI pretty constantly. I'm pushing them. I'm trying to get in touch with their engineers to work out some, I guess it's like inaccuracies in some of the data that they've given me. So I'm hoping people will come to the meeting next week, including my own committee and select board. I've only heard from 2 people. And Appleton seems on board. So we're sort of just giving as much support, at least my strategy is give as much support as I can and see how they perform. And then based on their performance, reacting. So I'm in support mode.
Okay.
Melissa, I see that Sarah Ann said that the commissioner, the county commissioner that covers Hope, which is Sharon, I think, Sharon Pullman, right? Is coming to the late July select board meeting for Hope.
That was news to me tonight. I didn't realize that. So I don't know what it's in reference to.
Well, I would, yeah. So I would hope that you would be there, and because you know where things stand with the county commissioners. Yes.
Yeah. Tonight that was news to me. I made a note. I'm gonna follow up with Sarah and participate in that meeting. We're having meetings in person now, and I think that makes it. I like that for persuasiveness and communication. So.
Okay. Great. Okay. So thanks, everybody. Is there any new business that anyone wants to bring up? Hearing none. All right. Well, thanks everybody for hanging in there, and look forward to seeing you and imparting your wisdom tomorrow, Stephen.
Thank you, Stephen.
Yep. And
Donna, are you going to make a motion to adjourn?
Someone?
Donna, motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I'd love that. Thank you, Jerry.
Second.
Thank you, Don. Nice to see you. A second, and all in favor. There we go. Thank you, Deborah, for hosting, and